Hi, my name is Michael Trout, and I want to introduce to you OIF and invite you to consider becoming an affiliate and a partner of Foundup Corp. Now, my vision is really no different than Wikipedia's framework, in the sense of I want to disrupt what's currently understood as a method for launching startup, because I believe there's no framework to the startup process. And what I'm doing is introducing you a systematic framework for launching any idea. We validate it by building the team, and the team is made up of advisors, team members, strategic partners, and prime partners. So that's part of the validation. One leads to another. The second part is building the prototype, and obviously if you get to the team members and the partners, it's going to lead you to the prototype, right? And the third component is the customer. And once we secure the customer, and we either have a customer or we have customer agreements in place, then guess what? We launch as a startup. Now ask yourself, startups with customers and startups that are profitable, what percentage of those succeed? Well, I'll tell you, a lot of companies aren't even available for investment once they have customers and so on, right? Because they're profitable. Take a good example is PCN Strategies, the company I work for in Washington, D.C. We're a startup. We've really been around 10 years. Mike Rosenbaum, my best friend, launched this, worked his butt off, didn't need any investors, and has developed a $10 million company. Now, would people be willing to put their money behind it? Sure they would. And ultimately, the thing is though, as a private company is profitable, there's no incentives for him to basically seek investors, right? There's no incentives, he's making money. Now think of that. If we launch Foundups in the same fashion and say, listen, let's think of a Foundup as kind of a hobby for folks who are busy, for folks who don't have time to participate in a startup, right? Foundups are laid back, they're easy, and we treat them as, like I said, a hobby. And we think of them as a strategic initiative that seeks to become a successful startup. Now, it's kind of like, okay, we think there's a business here. Let's figure out whether there is a business here. And, right? And once we figure out there's a business here, and we basically find that business, let's then launch it as a startup where we raise the capital needed to basically leverage it to a much greater audience. So instead of it being like Mike, who's now focused as an IT development, and he's really focused in DC, we could take an idea like Mike's, improve its validity, and then, basically write the business plan to secure the investments in order for us to launch in multiple cities and go after the same, customer. So a Foundup ultimately is a relaxed, easygoing, business initiative that seeks to become a business, right? It's the best way to think of it. I like to think of it as a blue ocean strategy, right? Blue ocean strategy is kind of like, if you think of the circus as the traditional, the Barlin Bay, there was tons of circuses at one point, there still are, and then all of a sudden you think of Cirque du Soleil. Cirque du Soleil is a blue ocean. It created their own niche. Foundup Corp is doing the same thing. We're saying, you know what, we're not going to play in your startup arena. Where you think teams are important, we think ideas are important. We think teams are easy to build, right? And in reality they are, because if you look at the federal contracting model, when we build teams, we don't ask people to quit their jobs for the potential, with a 5% chance of us launching, winning this bid for this proposal to launch. Because every time, we put an RFP in for a project for the government, in a way that's a startup, right? But what we do is we use resume banks and we contact people and say, hey, guess what? I want to put your resume in for this proposal, right? For this initiative. And if we win it, I may hire you, right? There's no agreement that I have to hire you, but I may hire you. Well, a Foundup works very similar way, right? So what we're doing is we're leveraging folks, we're leveraging their backgrounds, we're leveraging their networks, we're validating the idea, we're building the team, we're building the prototype, and we will also raise the funds. Now, we use a strategic initiative methodology that's raised over $1 billion for raising the funds for these initiatives. Now, traditionally, this method of fundraising is only accessible to very high-end nonprofits. Now, I was fortunate enough to work for a company, National Community Development Services, out of Buckhead, Atlanta, that over the last 30 years have pioneered this very, very successful strategic initiative methodology for raising capital. Now, I realized that this methodology could easily be applied to Foundups and strategic initiatives, what we call Foundups or business initiatives that seek to be a startup. Because in essence, what we were doing for these larger corporations and raising money, because these were all, in a way, you can think of them as Foundups. Hey, this is our idea. We first validate it. We then, once we validate it, we then test it. Once we test it, we then raise the capital. Once we raise the capital, it launches. It's that simple. And you don't give any equity out for all this economic development stuff. You don't do it. So it dawned on me, it's like, this is a great opportunity to add this component to the Foundup. So in essence, what I've done is I've taken parts from the open source coding movement. I've taken the framework from Wikipedia. I've taken the capital campaign raising component from strategic initiatives for nonprofits, right? And I've bundled it all together to create the Foundup and the Open-Incubator collaborative framework. It's that simple. So I hope that you will think of me as the Jimmy Wales for Foundups. And just as Jimmy Wales disrupted Encarta, which by then was a heavily funded, entrenched encyclopedia done by professionals, it was an institution version of the collaborative Wikipedia. The Startup is my Encarta, okay? The Startup is my Encarta. I am the collaborative Wikipedia framework for startups, okay? It's very important for you to understand the paradigm that I'm describing, because history does repeat itself. And you can either be one person who misses this opportunity to be part of something really tremendous and really great for entrepreneurs all around the world, or you can keep your head stuck in the sand, right? Just like 99.9% of the folks did with Wikipedia, because they scoffed at Jimmy Wales. Just as people scoff at me, I like it, because every time I see someone scoffing at me, I go, hey, I'm in the right place, But do due diligence. Talk to me, call me. Really think about what it is that I'm saying, because ultimately, I'm predicting the death of the startup. And maybe I'm a little bit more bold than Jimmy, because I don't think Jimmy Wales ever predicted the death of the encyclopedia. But in essence, you and I both know the encyclopedia online is dead. It's dead. There's never going to be a competitive, to Wikipedia. There never will be. It's dead. And just as Wikipedia, and I'm using the Wikipedia framework, understand that, has done that to the encyclopedia online, there's no reason why we can't do it to the startup. Think about it. I hope that you do, and I hope that you'll contact me and become part of what I'm doing. A simple test is this. Go to LinkedIn, under people search, just type Foundups, plural, hit enter. Follow that search. A month ago, there was one person listed in that search. Now there's 5 pages on LinkedIn. And there's no reason why in the course of the next, 3 years or something, there won't be 10,000 associated with Foundups. We have now we've licensed our product in China, Hong Kong, India, the biggest markets, right, where we want to completely disrupt startups. We have licensed. We're in the process of licensing the technology for Pakistan, Kuala Lumpur, or Malaysia, Singapore. Australia is another that we have, entity that we already are in the process of licensing. The world is going. I'm like Alexander the Great, carving up the world and saying, hey, who wants to found up? Who wants to be my general? Who wants to be my general in KL, right? Who wants to be my general in India? Because ultimately what we're seeking to do is to really help entrepreneurs that never in 1,000 years without our help will be able to launch their ideas. Maybe 0.1% will, because they're fortunate enough to know some money person to get behind their idea. But that money person, again, has no way of validating their idea, and they're going on their gut feeling. There's no systematic framework for them to launch it. And the moment that we can prove that Foundups are more successful than the startup, and think about it, we'll have 10,000 Foundups being crowdsourced into startups, right? Into successful startups. And the moment that they're launching, if I told you that the Foundup had, if we validate this and we say, listen, Foundups have a 90% chance of success. As an investor, where would you put your money? Would you put it with a startup, or would you put it with a Foundup? Think about it.